Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are jumping straight into a truly fascinating text called Elementary Cultivation, written by Feng. What makes this source material so incredibly unique is how it brings together major Eastern and Western spiritual philosophies. It basically asks the reader to approach life with a blend of the Taoist heart, the Buddhist heart, and the Christ heart. It's literally a handbook for spiritual ascension. It details exactly how to live in our modern chaotic world while cultivating a completely transcended mind. It is packed with some pretty radical ideas, and we're going to break it all down for you.
So, let's start right off with a massive paradox. What if the secret to ultimate success is, well, just giving up the desire to succeed in the first place? It's a wild thought, but it sits at the absolute heart of this philosophy. According to the text, our modern obsession with chasing success, agonizing over the future, and desperately trying to control everything around us, it actually leads directly to suffering. The author argues that true power and true success only arrive when you completely surrender that frantic need to win.
Okay, to really understand this, we need to define the foundational concept of the entire text. It's the concept of the One. Now, the text uses several names for it. You'll see it called the Holy Spirit, the Dharma, or the Tao, but essentially it is the original unembellished source of all things. It's the universe just operating perfectly without any interference from human ego or emotions. The text asserts that once you grasp this One, you actually stop judging the world through the narrow lens of your own ego. You stop getting confused by surface-level stuff, and you connect directly to the source.
And that connection creates a really stark contrast between how most of us currently live and how the text suggests we should live. Think about worldly thoughts. This is the exhausting everyday life for an ordinary person. It's constantly striving for fame, worrying about tomorrow, trying to glorify your family name, or just obsessing over wealth. Contrast that with cultivated thoughts. This is the effortless flow of someone who is cultivated. It means living entirely in the present moment. You act naturally, you adapt to whatever happens, and you never force an outcome. If you have a massive feast today, great, eat up. If tomorrow you only have pickles and water, you eat without a single ounce of resentment.
Which brings us to this really beautiful piece of advice from the text. The friendship of a gentleman is as light as water. Let's just take a second to reflect on that. The philosophy heavily advises us to seek lightness over intensity in every aspect of life, basically to protect your emotional energy. Think about it. Intense friendships, just like super intense flavors or emotions, they can turn sour in an instant, right? They hurt the heart. But connections that are understated, light, and easy, those last forever without draining your spirit. To really paint a picture of this unbothered, perfectly calm state of mind, the author uses 4 super vivid metaphors from nature. First, be as wood and stone, totally unmoved by the noise of the world, just observing the chaos with a calm, detached eye. Second, be as clouds, unrestrained, drifting freely without clinging to any particular scenery. Third, be as ice, constant, cool, and totally free from those volatile swings of intense love and intense hate. And finally, be as water, formless, humble, but possessing this quiet power to nourish everything and wash away the dirt.
Now, if you're trying to reach this level of chill, you've got to drop something most of us rely on constantly: cleverness. The text warns that your mind should be like a totally clear day. Schemes, it argues, are actually just traps that we weed for ourselves. You might think you're outsmarting the system, and hey, maybe you get a short-term win, but ultimately, those schemes trap the schemer. A clear, bright mind doesn't need to manipulate anyone. Things will naturally flow smoothly without carrying around the heavy mental burden of deception.
But hold on, because here's where the text takes a sudden and honestly really fascinating shift. We've talked all about this mental calmness, but what happens when this cultivated mind reaches its absolute peak? Well, the source material makes a very bold claim. It asserts that deep cultivation actually unlocks superhuman abilities. So let's look at exactly what that means.
According to the author, as your mind power becomes purer and gets closer to the One, your physical body undergoes real changes. The text uses the metaphor of a magnet. Just like an ordinary piece of iron can be magnetized until its molecules perfectly align to generate physical force, an intensely focused mind begins to attract special functions. The text lists things like walking on water, invisibility, or even moving objects with your mind. It's a mystical assertion for sure, but the author insists these aren't miracles, they're just the natural byproduct of intense spiritual alignment.
So, naturally, you gotta wonder, if you suddenly unlock these incredible, superhuman abilities, shouldn't you use them to help people? Specifically, should a cultivated person step in and use these powers to cure the sick and end suffering? The answer provided by the text is an abrupt, resounding no. And the reasoning behind it? It's quite a twist.
The reasoning comes down to how the author strictly categorizes the karmic origins of all illness. The text claims that a staggering 80% of diseases are entirely self-made. They're caused by overindulgence, stress, and worldly desires. Then 10% is inherited karmic debt from ancestors. 9% is collectively made by human society, like through pollution, and only 1% is just natural, universal order. So the text holds this very strict view that illness isn't random at all. It's a highly precise mechanism of cause and effect.
Because of this strict karmic order, the author philosophically forbids using mystical abilities to heal people. The text actually views suffering and disease as necessary mechanisms for debt repayment. Through the torment of being sick, a person is forced to stop striving for worldly fame and they actually pay off their spiritual debts. If you step in and magically heal them, well, you are interfering with the universal order. You're robbing them of the chance to clear their karmic ledger, which the text argues is ultimately way more harmful to their spiritual journey.
This absolute insistence on not interfering kicks off a rapid-fire sequence in the text. It outlines the ultimate rule of absolute harmony. Do not fight with heaven, earth, or people. So let's start with the first one. Why not fight with heaven?
The answer basically lies in our sheer scale. The text reminds us that we humans are literally just tiny particles in an unimaginably vast universe. Think about it. We can barely control our own daily habits, let alone predict our fates or know when we're going to get sick. To try and fight with the grand design of heaven, or to arrogantly believe we can somehow outsmart the universe's order, the text frames that as the ultimate act of foolishness. Okay, so we don't fight heaven. The next logical question the text poses is, why not fight with the earth? Why must we absolutely refrain from disrupting the physical world right around us?
Here the author issues a pretty stark ecological warning. Everything on Earth is connected in a perfect, mutually beneficial system. The text argues that any artificial transformation, things like using pesticides, carving mountains into terraces, or polluting rivers, completely destroys this delicate balance. According to the source, fighting with the earth is the equivalent of digging our own graves. Every attempt to conquer nature just turns heaven into hell, bringing floods, disease, and disaster right to our doorstep.
Now, I know we've been talking a lot about high-level mystical abilities and grand universal laws, but the text firmly grounds the reader back in reality with this core principle. To become a celestial, one must first cultivate to be a human. Meaning, before you can even think about reaching higher dimensions or transcending the physical world, you absolutely must perfect your mundane, everyday earthly life. You cannot skip the basics.
And that builds into a very strict logical hierarchy of human duties. You have to do your best in this exact order if you want to be free from worldly worries. Step 1, your parents. The text states it's impossible to ascend without fulfilling your duty to them. Step 2, your children. You are completely responsible for their upbringing until they hit 18. Step 3, your duties to society, nature, and your friends. And only after all that, at step 4, do you get to focus on yourself and dealing with your own personal desires. Speaking of dealing with your own desires, the text actually offers some highly unconventional advice here. Rather than forcibly repressing a strong desire, which the author says will totally backfire anyway, the text suggests you should safely indulge in it to the absolute extreme. The philosophy is that by overindulging, you'll inevitably realize how incredibly hollow, tasteless, and worthless that desire actually is. Once you truly see that it has no real power to bring you peace, the desire just naturally falls away.
So the crucial takeaway is that ascension is entirely about subtraction, not addition. Think of this as your literal checklist for ultimate freedom. To declutter the mind, the text insists you have to systematically discard what is worthless. That means cutting out meaningless meetings and affairs. It means distancing yourself from people who just constantly complain or gossip. It even extends to getting rid of non-practical decorations in your house and dropping totally empty societal traditions and superficial etiquette. Get rid of it all.
And that perfectly sets up this incredibly profound summary quote from the text. If a person cannot have a healthy, free life, your success and gains in life are failures. That is a radical, complete redefinition of what success even means. It literally doesn't matter if you become a billionaire or a famous expert. If you're stressed out, trapped by societal expectations, and spiritually burdened, the text views your life as a failure. True success is only measured by your internal freedom and your harmony with the Tao.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty massive question to chew on as we wrap up this explainer. Look closely at your own life, your daily routines, and your anxieties. Based on everything we've explored from this philosophy today, what worldly shackles are you going to discard first to reach that ultimate freedom? Take a moment to really reflect on that.
Thank you so much for joining me to explore this fascinating text, and keep seeking that clarity.